Something that we often get asked about, or we find ourselves getting into a good discussion about, when we send dogs home, or when we are even talking to somebody before training, is can they can we let our dogs do something sometimes, but not all the time? So that could be letting your dog up on the furniture, or letting your dog jump, or letting your dog eat from under the table during dinner time, or letting your dog do any number of things that maybe isn't a bad thing 100% of the time, but you want to have some control over that. Like, let's actually get our live feed on our other channel. I think we are. I am playing Eric and tech person to Eric today, so we'll see how the multitasking works. I needed an assistant. I definitely need an assistant, at least today, if not every day. But yeah, so like, for example, jumping is a big one. Some people like to invite their dogs up sometimes to just love on them. It's fun. It's like getting a hug. But when you walk in the door with groceries, or when you have company over, that even if they like dogs, don't necessarily want to be bombarded with dogs jumping on them as soon as they walk in the door. Like, you want your dogs to know that it's not okay right now. So how do you do that? How do you allow them to do something sometimes, but not other times? There's got to be... so something that we tell people is you can't teach a dog sometimes or maybe. Those are just concepts that they don't understand. But we can teach them always or never, and we can put stipulations on that, like, you can never jump on me if I'm just in your presence. If I'm just standing, if I kneel down, like, that's not an invitation. But you can always jump on me if I specifically say up, or if tapping on your chest is the universal sign and you're consistently okay with them jumping when you do that. That's an always or never scenario. So we have to create that sometimes for certain behaviors. We did that with our miniature schnauzer for getting up on the furniture. He was never allowed on the love seat or the recliner, but he was always allowed on the couch for a period of time. And then after we had our first child, we actually changed the rules, which took probably a week or so before he started to understand that the rules changed. We had to monitor him more than we normally would when changing those rules. But we changed the rule to you are never allowed up on the couch without invitation, but you are always allowed up on the couch when we call you up. So we would say, Pepper, up, and tap on the couch. So he knew when we did that, that meant he could come up. But he never just got up on the couch anymore. That was something that we decided to change when we had our newborn, our first Alaska, and we would have her just laying on the couch sometimes because it's at just the right tilt that she wasn't gonna roll right off. So we'd sat her there for a moment, going to get a diaper or whatever. This is before we had an actual changing table, newborn, first. Maybe not as prepared as we would have liked to have thought, but he would jump up on her sometimes because he couldn't see exactly where she was, and he's also been blind since he was 2. That's something to note. So our blind dog would jump right up on our newborn. So as new parents, that kind of freaked us out. So that's when we said, you're never just allowed to jump up on the couch. But sometimes we like to snuggle, right? So we would invite him up when we wanted him up. The same principle would work. Like, if you liked or you didn't mind if your dog ate things off the floor, which, depending on what it was, I would or would not recommend, but that's your decision. But if you don't want them to just come and hang out under the table and beg people for food when you have guests over, then you want to never allow them to do that unless you specifically say, clean up, or in the kitchen, or whatever your word for come eat the scraps off the floor is. So the sometimes and maybe concept is too abstract for our dogs to understand. But if we make it a always or never scenario, then they can understand. They can understand that, and we can have some control over when they do these behaviors. And this is different than things that we never want them to do. Things like destroying the carpet, peeing on the walls. Like there's a different approach for addressing those behaviors. But right now we're just talking about things that we don't want them to do just any old time. But there's sometimes that it's okay. And one analogy that we talk about sometimes that kind of pertains to this, and I'm just kind of improvising this. I've only got like 4 words written down. Just basically, again, this is something that we talk about a lot with our clients and potential clients. So just trying to give you guys a picture of that. So when our kids are at home, they know that certain things just aren't going to happen. They are not going to have dessert. They're not going to have candy and dessert like 2 minutes before bed. They're not going to stay up 3 hours past their bedtime on a school night. They are not going to dance and sing while jumping up and down on the dining room table. They know that when they're at home. But when they go to grandma's house, like, the rules are different, right? So, I hope that they aren't dancing on the dining room table. If they are, let me know, grandma and mom. But they know that like some of those rules will bend and they'll change when they're in a different environment, when they're with different people. And that's also something that you may notice with your dog doing certain behaviors with you, but not with your spouse, or vice versa. Like some families, they'll tell us that their dog always jumps on them, but they never do it to my husband, but they never do it to my wife. And it's, their significant other is probably more consistent with not allowing that behavior and redirecting them and showing them what they should do. For example, sit nicely, and then I'll love on you, and then if it's an appropriate time, then I'll call you up to jump. But that consistency is totally key. And if you can have a scenario where the dog will only jump on like one specific person in the house, or will only not jump on one specific person in the house, if they're totally consistent and no one else is. But what you'll find in that circumstance is oftentimes, even with, say it's me that the dog never jumps on, they're still going to test that boundary at times, because it's not universal just to everyone. So they're still going to test that. So like when my kids come home from being at grandma's house for 3 or 4 days, they usually ask if they can do things that in my mind are totally absurd. You've never ever been able to do that. Why would you even ask? They know that we don't do that at home, but there's a glimmer of hope that they might be able to. So they'll ask, can we have ice cream? It's like, we just brushed our teeth, like we're literally walking to your bed to go to bed. Like, no, you can't have ice cream. And these crazy things that they'll ask, it's because there's a glimmer of hope that it might happen, because it did just happen, potentially at my mother's house 2 days ago, having ice cream at 9:00 at night. That would never happen. But so our dogs are going to do similar. They're going to behave similarly. So even if you're totally consistent, if the household is not consistent, then you're still going to have your dog testing those boundaries all the time, still trying to figure out, like, is this allowed? Is it not allowed? Because they haven't really nailed down that finite answer. So it is definitely important to get the whole house on the same page. Again, if you sit in your favorite recliner every night and you never allow your dog up there, because that's when you're reading the paper or watching your favorite show, or you're just checked out, that's your time to just chill, and you don't want your dog on you at that moment, then they probably will not feel like invited right when you sit down, right? They know that you don't allow that. But if 3 other people in your house sit in that same chair throughout the day and they let them up, your dog is still going to, at times, question that. They're still going to try it. They're going to say, well, maybe today. Maybe today's the day that I can get up there. So you definitely want, especially with the things that are more important to you, anything that you care about the consistency of your dog doing, you want to make sure everyone in the house is on the same page. Everyone knows what the dog's allowed to do and not to do, and everyone is consistent with that. And on the subject of consistency, we also get asked sometimes, like, how do we teach a dog to, like, sit when we stop walking? Like, if we're walking down the street and we stop, our dogs will sit. And we won't cue them, we won't say anything, we won't do any hand signals. There's really no cue other than us stopping. We just stop and the dogs sit. If we walk up to a doorway, the dogs will sit. And there's several what we call implied commands that the dogs will pick up on, because every time we do a certain action, we expect a certain action out of the dog. Like the implied sit at the end when you stop walking, or when you walk up to a door. Those are the most common, easiest ones to talk about, I would say. So we are 100% consistent with that. So the dog, there is no question in the dog's mind that we're going to expect them to sit when we stop in front of a doorway. So there's not much of a thought process that has to happen for them to decide, should I sit or should I not sit? Does he want me to sit, or does he want me to do something else? When you're 100% consistent with any sort of behavior like that, your dog knows the expectation. They know what's to follow. They are going to be as consistent as you are. If 20% of the time, or 50% of the time, or even 80% of the time you do that, but then the rest of the time you don't, your dog's always going to have the thought, like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Or should I be doing something else? Or should I be waiting for some sort of cue? So that little bit of confusion is where you will get, that's where some of the frustration lies when you're trying to create or eliminate a behavior with your dog. Is oftentimes you're going to find that they're only going to be as consistent as you are. So with any of these behaviors, the more consistent you are, and your whole family is, the more consistent your dog's behavior will be.